when you're at that point where your body is starting to shut down, a therapist like cannot help you. You've got to get medical help. And so I actually went to a doctor, and this was so scary. The doctor told me, she was like, if you hadn't come in, this could have killed you. Like
Wow.
you prescribed me anti-anxiety and antidepressant. Immediately, I was able to sleep, and then I was able to get like healthier. I was able to breathe. I was able to, like, with that kind of mental clarity and without that boundary, I was able to say no to more things, which then allowed me a little bit more time to spend with my kids. I mean, yeah, there's sometimes that we just push ourselves and push ourselves and push ourselves, and it's not going to disappoint anybody if I say no to doing a project, if I say no to going to a family picnic because I don't want to. I want to stay home and just chill for a second.
We believe that you are strong by design, and you were made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You're listening to the #1 strength and health authority podcast in the world. So let's get ready to unlock your potential and transform your life in today's episode.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of the Strong by Design podcast. We release a new episode every Wednesday, and it is so good to be with you once again today. We have a really fun episode. As I've been just kind of looking over the cultural temperature, I guess, as it were, and seeing more and more on the rise, we see high anxiety, we see high depression, and people all over really the country and the world struggling with mental disorders and mental issues and trying to get through just the craziness that is the life that we live in 2023. And we have a really cool guest with us today who not only had some of these struggles herself, but also came up with a cool tool in order to tackle this, not only for herself, but is now open and has a podcast. It is called the Dreamful Podcast, and it is designed to help people who are struggling with depression and anxiety. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jordan. But the idea is that it helps them sleep at night, as a lot of times people that are struggling with this have a hard time sleeping. They have a hard time shutting their brains off and getting a good night's sleep. And we know that if you're not getting good, healthy sleep, that it affects the rest of your health when you're awake. That if you're not getting good sleep, it messes with your mental status. It messes with your physical status and your spiritual well-being. And so I'm excited to have Jordan with me today, and Jordan is going to share with us a little bit about our podcast. She's going to share a little bit with just her own story and her own struggle and how she has been able to battle that and combat that and with herself and her family. And so, hey, Jordan, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. Really excited
Jordan,
to be on the show.
Yeah, Jordan not only does Dreamful Podcast, you're also, what is the Buzzsprout podcast that you're on?
I also co-host Buzzcast, which
Yes.
is the podcast about podcasting for podcasters. It's very meta from Buzzsprout. So
Yeah. It's all over the place, doing incredible things. And thank you so
Thank
much
you.
again. I just want to say for taking the time to be with me today. We actually met at the podcast movement,
Yeah.
which was... How long ago was that now? A month and a half ago, maybe?
It feels like it was last weekend, but I think it was
Yeah.
a while ago.
Yeah, time. Actually, I was at my niece's wedding the exact same week, and we just got a thing that said it was, or I think my mom wrote and said, "Hey, I can't believe it was 6 weeks ago." So it was 6 weeks, which is just crazy because time flies. How my wife was like, I can't, like, it feels just like you. She's like, I feel like it was just yesterday that we were there. So, but it was cool. We got to learn about Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout is basically a host for podcasts. So if you are a podcaster or if you are looking into podcasting, Buzzsprout is a great place to go and look. And all kinds of cool tools. That can be a completely
Yeah.
different talk that we could have some other time.
I know,
Or
yeah.
just write Buzzsprout, and maybe Jordan will get back to you, and she can send you to the right people to get all the right answers. But
Yeah.
maybe, Jordan, you can just tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me a little bit about your story. Again, let me know. Tell me about your family. I don't even know. I know that you have a couple of kids.
I do.
Let's start there. It's a good place to go.
Yeah, so I have 2 daughters, and they're 11 and 6.
Okay.
So basically, I think my story in regards to like mental health struggles like really started as it did for most people during the pandemic. My husband was an essential worker. I was 29 at the time, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I was on the cusp of 30, and I was just like, I feel like I have to figure something out. And I didn't like my current job. And so I was trying out new things. And so I wound up being very good at the new things that I was trying. And it turned into 4 jobs. Okay. So I was working like 4 side jobs, which is a lot. And then the pandemic hit. And suddenly I was also doing like daycare and homeschooling for both of my girls. And what wound up happening was I was so intensely scared of failure. I was so intensely scared of letting people down because I had built up these side businesses so well, so quickly. And I was just completely like stretched thin. And so what I would do is I would like get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning, get my coffee, sit down and work, and then like help the kids with their stuff. And then I would work until like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I just worked like all day, every day. And this went on like weekends, everything. I went on a vacation for like my anniversary, and I wound up working in my hotel room because there was an issue with
How'd that
something.
go?
Not great.
I can't imagine.
My husband was not very pleased with me, but he also was understanding,
Sure.
And what wound up happening was it turned into a thing where if I had conditioned my body to where if I wasn't at my desk working, I started getting anxiety that I wasn't doing enough. Like I wasn't fulfilling everything I needed to do in order to like make other people happy. And I started getting like really worried that I was going to like let people down. And it got to the point where if I sat down to eat lunch, if I sat down to eat dinner with my family, I started getting panic attacks. And so I would start to try to eat, and then I would get a panic attack, and I'd be like, I can't do this. And I'd just go back in my office and work.
For people, I mean, people hear panic attack and they don't really, it's hard. It's probably a hard thing to even describe, but maybe if you could just walk me through a little bit, when you say panic attack, what exactly is going on?
Yeah, and panic attacks can show up differently for some people. I know some people that they can't breathe when they get a panic attack. Basically what happens is the body goes into this like kind of like shock or like fight or flight response, and it just like shoots up your adrenaline. It just sometimes people can like pass out, like they can faint. For me, it's like a really intense chest tightness, and I start getting numb. Like my arms and my hands will start getting numb, and it feels like you're having like a heart attack sometimes. But yeah, I know some people have gone to the emergency room because they can't breathe, they can't catch their breath. So
does it feel like kind of like a fear kind of feeling? Is that kind of how you describe it?
Imagine when you're walking up the steps and you think there's an extra step and there's not an extra step, and you step, and just for that moment, you have this like tightness, like, oh my gosh, I almost fell. And it's like that, but that moment never ends. And it can last anywhere from like, 10, 20 minutes to like days.
Not good.
So, yeah.
Sorry, I
not
didn't mean to
good.
interrupt there. Yeah.
No, you're totally fine. Yeah. Yeah. So it's basically like that. Like I would start getting like this like numbness, tingling. I'd just panic. And so I'd go back in my office and I'd just work. And what wound up happening was I started not being able to sleep at night because I wasn't able to sit down and rest if I wasn't working. And so what happened was it like trickled into my sleep patterns. And so I would lay down for bed, and then all of a sudden I'd get that feeling like you're about to like fall, like you're about to like step off a cliff. And my adrenal glands, like I could literally feel my adrenaline coming, like it would just be like as soon as I'd start falling asleep, my body would be like, no, 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 don't fall asleep. And then I'd like calm down, do my breathing exercises, and then it'd be like, don't fall asleep. And so that went on for days and days and days. And I just couldn't sleep because my body it felt as if I would be like attacked if I fell asleep, if I took like a rest. And
Then it almost becomes like a fear to go to sleep.
yes, I would get stressed about going to sleep. And then I'd get a panic attack because I was like, I need to sleep, but I can't sleep. My body's not letting me sleep. And then I'd like, I mean, we're talking like a vicious, vicious cycle because you need sleep to, regulate your mental health. But I couldn't get the sleep because I was so mentally unhealthy. And this is serious stuff. It got to the point after like a few months of this, I started losing my hearing and vision.
Oh, wow.
And that was the scariest moment of my life. I would sit down and then everything would just kind of like go like tunnel vision and go black. And I would hear just like when you're underwater and it was just like wah, wah, wah when people were talking. And it was like a pressure in my head. And it was so scary. But yeah, it got really bad.
I mean, I can only imagine. Like, I never heard of that before. I didn't know that it was something that it could actually get to the point of the physical, repercussions of not figuring out how to handle it. I mean, stress causes a lot of issues, right? I mean, stress can cause, heart attacks and things along those lines. So, I mean, when your mental state isn't where it needs to be, eventually it starts to take the wear and tear on your body as well. That makes sense. I mean, we talk about that all the time on our show that, our physical and our spiritual and our mental are all intertwined together. And so one is always affecting the other, right? Mm-hmm. Which is why it's important to take care of all those aspects of your life and not to neglect any of them. But so continue. Yeah. So you're having these panic attacks. You're wrestling through it. All of a sudden, you're going blind. You can't hear. Now what?
Now I tell my husband, I think I need to go to a center because I am freaking out.
How is he responding through all of this? By the way, does he seem
concerned.
Supportive, or is he like? You're okay, whatever,
No, he was concerned far before I was because both of his parents are counselors. So he sees these like warning signs, and I'm the type of person that's like, I'll be fine. This is just a rough patch. I'm going to work through it. And I kind of bought into this, I want to say like the hustle culture. Like you have to hustle. You have to work hard for what you want. And I was like, I'm going to be 30. I have to work hard for what I want. But at what cost, And I felt like I couldn't take, I had 2 daughters that I was taking care of. I was trying to maintain these like 4 jobs and I didn't want to let anybody down. And I felt like it was selfish of me and ridiculous to take time for my mental health, to take just like a mental health day or to go to the spa to like breathe for a second, just something, or to go to a therapist. I can't afford an hour a week to go to a therapist. So, what happened was I just let it get that bad.
Isn't it interesting the association of guilt that we have with rest?
Yes.
It's such a weird thing where, man, I'm tired. I want to take a nap, but I can't tell anybody because I'll feel guilty that I'm taking a nap in the middle of the day or whatever it might be. It's an interesting part of our culture. I don't know if it's around the world, but definitely in American culture where it's like, hey, if you're resting, then that means you're lazy. And I have this conversation with my wife as well, who's had a lot of the same a journey, I would say, as you have, and I'm like, babe, go take a nap. Like, it's okay. Like, please do. And everything's going to be fine. I'll take care of whatever I need to take care of, but, making sure to take care of yourself. And so it's just funny as I talk to people and I hear their stories, this continual weird guilt association with rest. But yeah.
I think you're right. I think that is an American thing. I don't think that is common in other cultures. I think that they respect, their, days of rest. They respect spending time with family. They respect, taking a nap when they are tired or in the middle of the day. It's very, very customary to just be slow and just slow down. And we just have this like weird mentality where we just have to go, 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 like regardless of what the cost is. And if you slow down, then you're weak and you're not going to make it. You're not going to be successful.
And even in places where they say, hey, we love the family and we want to make sure that you're investing in your family, but we need you to work 60 hours a week. And you can't go home this weekend, and the job has to be the priority. And it's like, I don't think that your perspective or your values are quite matching up with what you're saying.
I mean, we have that thing, my husband actually works for a company that does this all the time where they'll say, oh, it's the family. Like it's the business. Like we're not just a business, we're a family. And sometimes you have to really draw that line and say, you're not my family. Like, and
come on, Michael Scott.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Why can't your work people be your work people and your friends be your friends?
That's exactly it. Yeah. And once those lines kind of get blended, then you no longer have, the work-life balance because it all becomes work, or your life can put your work in jeopardy if something, for relationally, if you don't jive with somebody at some point. So it's very important to like keep up those boundaries.
Did you see as all of this is going on, how did your kids respond to you?
They were really,
or did they even know?
They knew because it would just like, I don't know, sometimes if I would hear like the TV and them talking to me and I was trying to think of something else, it would overwhelm me and I would start losing my sight and my hearing. And it was just like this like shutdown, like my body was literally shutting down. So my kids were pretty concerned. They were also really concerned that I was always working and they were very saddened by it, which I think also contributed to my guilt. It was like a guilt that I wasn't working for them. And it was also a guilt that I was working too much.
Yeah.
It was
that cycle.
Oh, I mean, just so much guilt and anxiety and stress. And it was horrible. But yeah, so basically my body started shutting down and I realized like, okay, I need help. Like that was, for some reason, that was the point at which I went, okay, it's time to like get help.
So you made an appointment with your in-laws.
No.
Just kidding.
I totally would have though, because they're amazing. Yeah, but I did make an appointment with a therapist, and when you're at that point where your body is starting to shut down, a therapist like cannot help you for the most part. Like when you're that far gone, it really takes like medical intervention. And so she was just like, I can't help you at this point. And you're like, your journey, you've got to get medical help. And so I actually went to a doctor, and this was so scary. The doctor told me, she was like, if you hadn't come in, this could have killed you. Like you could have died.
Yeah.
Just of the stress.
Yeah,
and
so I mean, that, add
call.
that to your plate,
Yeah. That was oh my gosh, what did I do to myself? But you know what? She prescribed me anti-anxiety and antidepressant. And oh boy, I mean, it was just immediately I was able to sleep, and then I was able to get like healthier. I was able to breathe. I was able to, like, with that kind of mental clarity and without that boundary, I was able to say no to more things, which then allowed me a little bit more time to spend with my kids. I mean, yeah, there's sometimes that we just push ourselves and push ourselves and push ourselves. And that was such an important lesson for me to learn, was that it's not going to disappoint anybody if I say no to doing a project, if I say no to going to a family picnic because I don't want to. I want to stay home and just chill for a second.
Yeah.
So
was that a hard process getting on medication? I know a lot of people have struggles as they're trying to find the right one, and this one works and this one doesn't work and this one makes me tired and this one, how was that process for you?
That is really difficult. Luckily, the anti-anxiety I just took as needed. So when I would start feeling anxious, I would just take that. And it does make me sleepy, but honestly, that's probably okay. Like it's one of those trade-off things. And
it's kind of your body saying to stop and rest anyway, right? So I mean,
yeah. Yeah, exactly.
There's
So
value in
those
that.
are good pills for like you need to take a nap, just you need a timeout, basically. you know? Um, and then the antidepressant medications, I think that those are more finicky than a lot of other ones. For example, for with one of them, I got like super dizzy one time, and then I switched to another one, and it made me really nauseous. Like I felt like when you have like morning sickness or you just your stomach's like a little like sour. And so it's just like constant nausea and I didn't like that so much. But then you find one where you just feel fine and you just feel okay and it's like, "Oh, finally." It is such a relief when you do find something. And then, you know, those aren't forever. You know, it's just enough to get you to the place where you're healthy enough to go out on your own. It's like training wheels on a bicycle, and then once you are back on the bike and you're, able to drive straight, you can take them off,
Yeah.
gradually. So
And have
it's
you been able
it's
to do
good.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
I still
Yeah. My wife is.
sometimes do the like anti-anxiety because I mean,
Hmm.
there's
Sure.
triggers, like there's things that'll trigger you, especially if I
Hmm.
don't sleep well. Ooh boy, that's like
Hmm.
just a panic attack waiting to happen because I
Yep.
still do that thing where I'm like, oh no, I'm not sleeping. It's gonna happen
Hmm.
again. It's almost like a
Hmm.
PTSD.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
keep those handy.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife was, I remember it was one day she didn't like, she's like, I don't want to be on these forever. I'm going to stop. And I was like, I don't think you can do that. You
Yeah.
know? But she did. And she's been off for quite a while now too. And, I'm really proud of her and for, the effort. She's been able to go to some counseling as well. And really work through a lot of that stuff. Which where did you go back to a counselor then? Once, I mean, she sent you away and said, "Hey, you need to get medically helped." Then did you go back?
Yeah, I did at one point and then I got busy again
Yeah,
because life,
sure.
and so I took a break. But I have actually been wanting to go back again because it's nice to have someone to talk to that is not your
Hmm.
spouse or
Sure,
coworker.
sure.
So it's
Yeah,
really nice.
yeah. We recently so we have a 10-year-old, we have an 11-year-old, a 10-year-old, and then 8-year-old twins. So we have four. And our 10-year-old recently has been starting to have a little bit of anxiety and some attacks when she's going to sleep at night. And I'm thinking, man, you're 10 years old. Like, what possibly could you be going through, And so, but we were able to get her, we have a counselor that we like to go to. And we've been, she's been helping our family out for years and years. And so, but she does a lot of her stuff based on temperament. And so you do like a temperament assessment to see, hey, because we all interact with the world differently, right? You have introverts, you have extroverts, you have people who like control, you have people who don't like control. And so kind of a lot of our issues will develop out of, based on our temperaments. And so it's been not good what she's been going through, but then hearing what our counselor has to say and helping her walk through that and helping her grow and develop in that. And I don't know. I know that with COVID, for sure, we were all trapped in our homes and things like that. But I do see that just the up and coming generations, the percentages are a lot higher as far as depression and anxiety and suicide rates and all of these things. And it just makes me think, what is happening in our culture that is causing these issues to happen so much? It feels like so much younger. I mean, that's kind of my assessment. I don't know if you see that as well. I just kind of I'll throw that back to you. I don't know kind of what your take on that is, or if you even thought about it.
I haven't thought about it so much, but just hearing you talk about that, I'm reminded of I forget what that documentary is called, and it was such an important thing. But it was about how social media
Yes,
affects
I know it,
children.
on Netflix.
Yeah, why am I not thinking of
The
what that
Social
is?
Experiment.
Thank you. Yes,
Yes.
and I'm really
Don't quiz
reminded
me
of
on my
that.
references because I
I
got the
know.
good references.
I am reminded of that though because
Hmm.
I mean, I think that kids are exposed to so much more, and there's just all this noise. When we were kids, I remember it'd be like a Saturday, and if I didn't have any friends around, it was just like me and my Legos or me and whatever else I wanted to do. And there's just so much quiet. We didn't have phones, we didn't have things like entertain us. And these children are just constantly bombarded by content. They're constantly just, and imagine how loud that would be to like a developing brain. And I think especially, you're talking
Wait,
about
their
like,
brains aren't developed yet?
yeah, wild, right?
Yeah.
And talking about your 10-year-old, my 11-year-old, she's been struggling. She just went to middle school this year. This is her first year in middle school.
For our son as well.
Okay. And I feel like when you have these transitions into new things, there's a lot of struggle, and that can produce anxiety. And my daughter's been really struggling with having like a ton of different teachers, and all the teachers have different expectations, and she has ADHD, so she's just like, I don't know what to do with this. And it's been such a struggle for her. And she has actually asked me, can I please go to therapy? She asked me that. And the thing that I really like about this generation, our kids' generation, is that I think that they're going to have these tools to manage their mental health a lot earlier than our generation did.
Yeah.
So things could still be okay for them,
Yep. Yeah, I remember being a kid and getting bored with video games and saying, okay, this was fun for a little bit, but I don't think my kids would ever stop if we didn't make them stop, if we didn't give them those boundaries. And they like it so much that they watch people on TV playing video games. And I'm like, man, that's like, when I was a kid, we were just waiting like for our turn. We hated to watch other people. And now there's whole YouTube channels and all kinds of things of these people just playing video games, and kids are watching it. It's just, it's crazy to me.
It's like, it's like game inception. My kids will watch
game inception.
They'll watch kids on, like they have their tablets. They'll watch kids, like they'll have like the little YouTube thing on the side, and it's other people playing Minecraft, and they'll have it up while they're playing Minecraft. And it's almost like this like mirroring thing, or just they feel like they're a part of a community playing Minecraft with other people. And yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah. I don't fully understand it, and we've banned some of them from in our house because even those have weird content that ends up coming through, and you're like, okay, you can't watch him anymore. That's done,
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But
I found that like what's really interesting with my kids is, you do the punishment of you're gonna have to take away tablet. Like you can't have tablet this week because you've been acting up, you have an attitude, whatever. And it's so funny because literally like 10, 12 hours later, my 6-year-old will be like, you know what? I actually really don't like having tablet, and so this was good. And we're just like, okay, like it was supposed to be a punishment, but if you're enjoying yourself, I guess that's okay too.
Yes, our kids will do the same thing where they're done with, like, the day is over, and they're like, wow, we were a lot nicer to each other today, and I wasn't so upset with it. And I'm like, yes, but then it's like that is quickly forgotten, and the next day it's like, oh, can I play? Yeah, our kids have to earn time, and so they do chores or whatever, and so instead of getting money, they earn electronic time.
Oh, that's smart.
And it is smart, except when you have 4 kids, and then they're like, hey, we all have an hour of time, and they end up playing video games for 4 hours because they're all just watching the TV as the. And I'm like, okay,
yeah.
I said, okay, hold on a second. You guys are manipulating the system here just a little bit. So I had to tell them, if you're watching someone else play, that counts as your time too. And so then they're figuring it out where they can't do it all the time, but
they'll find another loophole someday.
Oh man, they're always finding loopholes. They're very clever, these guys. But so we're figuring out stuff with our daughter, and she is getting better. She's still having some trouble, like falling asleep at night and things like that, and we're working through some of that stuff. We switched to homeschool this year for all of our kids, and so that's a big change. My wife's job changed, and so there's been a lot of change that has happened that I think that she's just trying to figure, she doesn't know how to process it. And so it's coming out of feeling kind of like chaos or out of control. But we're figuring it out, right? We've used I know that so we'll get to your podcast here in just a second, but what we've used for our kids is a CD that was given to us when our first born was born. It was like a present that we got, and it was called Scripture Lullabies, and it's like Bible scriptures like put to music, and he's 11 years old, and they still listen to it like every night as a way to just lullaby them to sleep. And so having that, I think, is important. It's an important tool to help them fall asleep. And so I know that for you, originally, before you started your podcast, you wanted to start recording bedtime stories for your girls, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah. That's exactly what I did. Was I started the podcast for my kids for that exact reason.
Gotcha.
Because they
So
like
it was
listening
always
to things.
intended to be a podcast.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought maybe you just recorded it and just like played it for them at night or something.
I recorded it with the mindset that like no one else would ever listen, because who would listen to my podcast? And it wound up being a little bit more than that, but yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Tell us
how
about
it
it.
started.
Tell me, this is your chance. Go ahead and this is your non-shameless plug, I guess, if you
Here
want
we
to
go.
do that. Yeah, there you go.
No, it's actually like a really funny story because, my kids love listening to things to go to sleep. But the problem is like sometimes I'd catch them changing, like I would put on Spotify for them, like gentle music, and sometimes something else would be queued up and it would be like an energetic song, or sometimes I'd go in and they'd be listening to like the Trolls.
Death metal.
Yeah, exactly. The Trolls soundtrack
Yep.
or something like that.
Sure.
And I'm like, this is a little too high energy. And
They're
the kids were
dancing
just
on their
like,
beds.
right? No, they would be sleeping to it, which was really weird, but whatever, works for them. But I wanted to record like bedtime podcasts for them because when I was on my own mental health journey, I listened to a lot of like bedtime story podcasts, because when it's quiet, your brain has a moment to like just kind of like overthink, and like you start running through things. If you're not somewhat distracted, if you don't have your brain, like white noise or music, or like I said, like bedtime story podcasts. My favorite when I was sleeping was Sleepy with Otis Gray. I love that podcast. And so it just felt like a warm hug, listening to someone else talking, and I just felt like safe. And I wanted that for my kiddos. And so I started that. And then after a couple years, like of doing the podcast, I realized that a lot of my listeners, like I would do listener surveys. I would have people write in and making comments or writing me on social media. And it was so funny because I realized like, oh, my audience is no longer children, because I started it for kids. And then it was really funny because just adults would be writing in, and it was just all ages. We're talking like, these guys in college would write into me and be like, I know it's like weird because I'm a dude in college, but I really like your podcast. And then I would have like a 7-year-old woman that like loves to listen to it every night because she doesn't like sleeping alone, or someone who has been through trauma and they need it to sleep. And so I took my podcast out of kids and family and moved it into mental health, because it just turned out to be really important to people to have that. And, I'm thinking about your kids with their scripture lullabies. Another thing that's like really important for people when they sleep is having that repetition, like that familiarity, because it does feel safe. You know it. And so a lot of people who listen to like sleep podcasts are very, very loyal to that particular podcast, and they don't want to listen to other ones because that's their like safe place. And you want to feel safe when you're sleeping. So
It's familiar.
yes, exactly.
No, that's good. And what exactly do you write? Are you writing your own stories? What are you reading on your podcast?
I started doing that. I just like kind of played with writing. I have like 2 original stories I did really early on when I started my podcast. And I was like, man, that's so much work. I would much rather go like dip into the public domain, maybe do an adaptation of something, or, just read straight up from Grimm's fairy tales or Andrew Lang. And that is a lot easier because making a podcast is a lot of work. And I realized like
No,
when
it's
you
not.
add
It's
that,
easy.
oh yeah, I know it's so
Anybody
easy.
can do it.
If you don't edit, it's like super easy.
That's right.
Yeah. And so I started with writing because I love doing creative things like that. Those episodes turned out amazing. They were great. They're loved, but that's so much work. And I
Right.
don't have the bandwidth for it. And I'm looking out for number one, my mental
That's
health.
right.
So I'm not putting more on my plate.
That was back. That was back in the early days, when you're
I know
having
better
panic
now.
attacks and all that stuff. That's right.
Exactly.
That's good. Yeah, I was able to listen to just a little bit to it of your stuff this last week, just to get familiar. It's awesome. I mean, it's very calming, and I just love what you're doing. And this came up when we were at the podcast movement about your podcast and what you're doing, and I'm like, man, this is so good, and that's why I wanted to bring on the show, is just because I know that, like I said, I think 1 in 5 people are struggling with mental health stuff. Again, looking at our culture and seeing just the ramping up of everyone feeling like they're on edge, and it's like my anxiety doesn't just affect me, it ends up affecting the people around me. And I carry that with me, and I carry that into normal everyday scenarios like driving my car and buying groceries. And you just never know how it's going to affect you. And so I love that you have this podcast that is helping to address that problem and helping people get the sleep that they need and hopefully get back on track with the health that they need as well.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
So did you think that would be, did you ever in your wildest dreams think, hey, this is probably what I'm going to help people with mental disorders, be able to get back on track?
No, I thought I would have just like a few kids that would enjoy my stories, and then it just kind of like blossomed into something so much more meaningful. And I think that also being very open and candid about my own mental health struggles helps other people to relate, and it helps them to feel secure in that they're not, weird, or that, it's not shameful that they have anxiety or, depression and just can't get out of bed or something like that. So I think that it's really, really important to, I didn't expect to have a platform in order to like reach so many people, but it's so meaningful when people will write me and be like, man, I had this traumatic experience and I struggle with anxiety, and, you talking about it and just listening to this has helped me so much because I couldn't sleep and I would just panic. And so it's pretty cool. It's cool to be able to talk to people, and so many others have the same issues, but we're like together a little bit.
Yeah. Do you still feel like you have, do the issues kind of relapse ever, or do you feel like you're able to catch stuff in time? And then what are you doing in order to make sure that you're not slipping back into that state of going blind and losing your hearing?
Well, hopefully I never get there. Hopefully my husband just like drags me to the doctor before that happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically, I'm just making sure that I leave enough room for myself and for my family in my life. So even when things are really busy, I mean, I do have weeks where my workload is pretty hefty. I do have weekends where I have to work a little bit sometimes just to like get things done because it's important. But other than that, I make sure that I spend quality time with my family. I make sure that I take time. This is such a silly thing, but like I find that when I cook dinner, like from scratch, just like a really intricate dinner, and it takes me like an hour, hour and a half, there's something very meditative about doing something with my hands. So I try to do that. I try to go to the gym because, physical activity helps, or go for a walk. Sometimes I'll start getting anxious, and my husband will say, "Hey, do you want to go for a walk downtown?" And we'll just do that for like 10 or 15 minutes and just walk around. And I swear there's something about being out in that fresh air and not in the place where I'm starting to have that stress and anxiety that takes me out of it, even just for a minute, and I'm able to kind of like reset. And then it doesn't go into like a full blown anxiety or panic attack. So just little habits like those, just taking these like little moments, even if it's just like 10 minutes, to say, you know what? I feel like I have some anxiety coming on. I'm feeling stressed right now. I'm feeling jittery. I'm feeling my stomach's not great. Just recognizing those symptoms and saying, you know what? I think I need to like take a step back and, go putt around the garden for a second, or, I don't know, just whatever makes you happy for 2 seconds. Like vacuum.
At what point would you say, hey, you're at a place where I think it'd be good for you to go go talk to a counselor? Is there a point that you think that someone would get, at what point would you say that to somebody?
I think if somebody was having difficulty understanding why they're feeling a certain way, or difficulty understanding why other people are interacting with them the way that they are, like maybe they're finding like a pattern, like something just seems off and they can't put their finger on it, or maybe they're having reactions to things that don't line up with the circumstances. So for example, if someone were to spill water and you have a big reaction like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. Why on this day? It's usually when your reactions and your emotions and the way that you interact with people doesn't line up with what's happening and the situation, that's usually a good indicator that there are expressed emotions that you really need to take care of, even if you're not aware of it, and usually you can tell if you're just like, oh man, I blew up on my kid over this thing and that was so stupid and I have to go like apologize. Like usually you're probably under stress and maybe you need to like just take a step back and think about that and talk with somebody.
Yeah, figuring out good tools to manage that stress.
Yes.
Which is going to look different for everybody. But
Exactly.
I don't manage my stress very well either, and I end up getting migraines. And so my wife is like, she's like, you need to figure out how to get rid of some stress so that you don't, you're not, because it's my body's way of saying, okay, you got to shut down for half a day or whatever, to not do anything. So,
which can actually make it a little bit more stressful because you're feeling stressed, like you need to get things done, but then you get this horrible headache, and it's just like, no, not today. I have to get this done.
Exactly. Yep. Or it's an important thing that's coming up, or something that you're excited about, like going on a trip or something like that. Well, what is your hope for Dreamful going forward? Do you have big plans? Or are you just going to keep rolling and see what happens?
I'm just going to keep rolling with it. Things seem to be working really well. I feel like I'm in a good groove with it, and it just, my podcast is just like, it is what it is, and it's if I make too many like changes or do too many like grand things with it, it would probably really put people off because they're familiar with it. So I have to stick to my my formula, but that's okay too. I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, that's good. I think it's great. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you, Jordan, coming on and being able to be vulnerable with your story about how, with you, your family, how I'm still just kind of blown away the idea of having those kind of physical ramifications of not dealing with stress and anxiety and depression and all of the things that it can do to you. So thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you for your podcast. Thank you for helping bring awareness to how people can get help, because I know that people, they want to get help. People don't want to be in that state. People want to get better. So I appreciate you. And again, go check out Jordan's podcast. It's just Dreamful Podcast, right?
Dreamful Bedtime Stories, but I call it Dreamful Podcast as
Okay.
well. Either one will get you there.
Dreamful. Okay, yeah. Go Google Dreamful, and I promise that you'll find it. We'll also link it below so that you have access to that. If you're having struggles, or if you have questions, or you just have a comment about your own story, please feel free to comment below or to write us and let us know what's going on. Again, Jordan, thank you so much for being here. And as always, we will be back next Wednesday with a new episode for you. So have an incredible week, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.